Latinas Think Big, Jordan Brooks, Managing Director of United States of Women, Nelly Barrero, Senior Global Inclusion and Diversity Managing Director at Accenture, and Christy Wallace, COO of Ellevate Network.
Hello. So what are you thinking so far? Is this meeting your expectations? Are you getting inspired? If you enjoyed Wade, he was on the Ellevate podcast that came out last week, so you should check it out. As was Nelly, actually, was on the podcast, so we've got some great stories on there. So this panel is the anti-queen bee. And every woman on this panel that you see here is tackling inequalities day in and day out. These women are the anti-queen bees. These women are the lions. This is my term I'm going to coin. Just as female lions, they hunt, they feed the group, they take care of others. The women on this stage, and you in the audience, I'm looking at all of you because I believe that you're a part of this. You represent power, strength, resilience, and courage. And that's what we need to change this world and to make a better, more equal place to live. So we're going to start on a very positive note. We're all about positivity here. And I would love for those on the panel to share one quick story about a professional ally, your lion, who has advocated for you. Nelly, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for being here today. So, my journey at Accenture has been a journey of 30 years. And when I started, I was the first Latina in the New York office. So it was a pretty challenging experience the first couple of months. And throughout my career early on, I understood that I needed to align myself with someone that would be influential, that would help me and guide me and mentor me, while at the same time I would still remain authentic to who I am. And that was pretty challenging. So my lion, whatever we're calling it these days, was someone by the name of Pam Craig, who eventually became our CFO and has since retired. But she sat me down and she had a courageous conversation with me. And she said, these are all the things that you're doing that are working for you. And by the way, these are all the things that are not. And initially, I was very upset, very angry at her, kind of hated her for a few days. But, then I let it all sink in. I internalized some of the messaging, and I went back and I thanked her. And that began a relationship that until today, we have become the best of friends. And the other thing around that is she's a white woman that was raised in a very different environment than I was. And I initially doubted why she was so interested in me. Was I going to become her minority pet project? And I had to shed that belief system within me and understand that she saw something in me that she thought was worth nurturing. So that's my story.
Thank you, Nelly.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Hi. Well, I was very lucky in that I got to spend the first 8 years of my life in the Obama White House, which was my first career life, which was pretty extraordinary for me. And I had many female lions that worked there that were really, really important to me. Two, however, were Valerie, Jarrett, and Chen, who saw me as I was Tina's special assistant, which basically meant I sort of ran her entire life and the office of the First Lady with her. And they realized that I cared so much about gender equality issues. And they looked at me and they saw me working really hard and they said, would you like to take over sort of helping to run the Council on Women and Girls? They took a chance on me. I was young, but I was hungry and I really, really cared about these issues. They knew it. They knew that was my background. And they just said, go do it, run, because they really wanted me to thrive, but they also really needed somebody to do it. So I think those were my two incredible lions, and I think they are continuing to do that for women all over.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So in 1998, I had finished my doctorate degree in clinical psychology, and I was hired at NYU School of Medicine to run a clinic. And the title they gave me was Director of the Multicultural Research Clinic. And so when I remember thinking, oh my God, that's a huge title. Like, that's so powerful. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, am I going to be able to perform it? Is this too big for me? And so I had a mentor, Dr. Dharma Cortez, who was actually the first Latina As you can see, I'm Latina. The first Latina PhD that I had ever met. So sociologist, and she became my mentor when I was working at the Hispanic Research Center. And she came up to me and she said, Angelica, because I said to her, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. She said, Angelica, I want you to know that you are a commodity to this research center. And then she went on to explain to me why. And I'm not going to give you the details, but that phrase really changed my life. And I began to see myself as someone who is incredibly valuable to a company, to a research center, to wherever I am. So today, I practice that, and I share that same phrase with the women that I coach or I see in private practice. So I thank her for doing that for me, because it's been transformative.
Should I repeat hello, is that better? I'm loud. Should I repeat myself or start again? Start again? I'm good. All right, so my lion was my HR person and the best friend, and we interacted a lot in professional circumstances, and then, or in the room together, and then not in the room together. So when I was in the room with her, she would say, hey, you did a great job on that, or you didn't do a great job on that. You should have done this differently. Here's how you, and it was such, her relationship with me was such an asset, and I hope I was an asset to her as well. But I think it's interesting because it draws on what Sally and Jessica were just talking about, this idea of alliances. And I'm a huge believer, I thoroughly agree with Sally, that we can't wait for men. This thing is gonna happen because women make it happen. We're good at making things happen, right? And so me and my human resources colleague, we had power and we made stuff happen in the department. We didn't always, or sometimes often, get the credit for things that we made happen, but we made a lot of stuff happen, and I think that made a big difference.
Nellie, recognition, or lack thereof, is oftentimes in the workplace a top-down initiative. What can we do to change that, and why should we?
One of the things that I talk about when we're doing our courses internally around the women's agenda, and I love the comment that Jessica said earlier, don't even start bringing your own man. I thought that was pretty cool. It's about public praise, right? I have found in this whole mindful journey that I believe a lot of us are on, when you praise another woman and you give her that public praise, or you do it privately, you are empowering that individual, right, to get recognition. Sally mentioned earlier the word of empowerment and how important that is. And I have found that in my journey, whenever I either have experienced it, having a leader talk about the value that I've brought to the organization, or have a leader talk about me when that person is on stage, how others will look at me. They will look at me in a way that is more supportive, is more embracing. So I have learned to do that as well for other people. And in the mindfulness space, it feels really good to be able to lift other people. When you think about how good it feels, you start to want to do that more and more often. There's a certain reward that you get. In the opposite sense, when you're operating from a place that you're being a little bit negative or disruptive, or you are, trying to sabotage someone's career, it may feel good for the first few minutes, few hours, few days, but I guarantee you that will not last long, because that negativity comes right back at you. So it is about public recognition. How do you do that for other women in a way that will benefit them?
Thank you. Romy, so we just talked about what we can do in the workplace. I would love to talk a little bit about how technology is creating more pathways for women to help each other as well.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, we founded Fairy God Boss, which is an online career community where women can review their company with regard to how gender diverse and how supportive of women it is. We founded it because my co-founder, Georgine, was job searching while she was 2 months pregnant, unexpectedly because she'd been fired, and was trying to figure out where she could go work, where she could get ahead, have a shot at a real management role, not be harassed every day, and have a reasonable work-life balance and have a good maternity leave. And she couldn't find that information out. So we started crowdsourcing that information, and we've got 30,000 reviews now on our site 2 years later of thousands of companies. And again, I think this is about empowerment, and it's transparency and empowerment and women helping other women. So the thesis of it in our name, Fairy God Boss, is about this idea that if you can share this information, you're empowering women. You're empowering us all. And it certainly, I think, relates directly to this Uber story and to Susan Fowler and this idea that, I mean, when I hear that story, what always sits with me is that this guy, and there were apparently a lot of people guilty of sexual harassment at Uber, but the one guy in particular in Susan Fowler's story was at Google and got a new job, had been complained about at Google and got a new job. And so we have all got to speak up because there are 10,000 reasons I'm sure they didn't, which is why Fairy God Boss is anonymous and we allow for anonymous opportunities to speak up. But if the women at Google had been more public about this guy, he would not have then gone on to harass women at Uber. So we can all help each other and have to help each other because, again, it's going to come from us. We can't wait for the men.
Angelica, starting a new company is scary. Even thinking about starting a company and going out on your own can be scary. How do we support women that are going through that decision?
Well, if you're already an entrepreneur and you have someone coming in and saying, you know what, I want to leave my job, which actually is happening to a lot of women. I want to leave my job and I want to have a business. I want to launch a business. I have a great idea. And normally, if you're an entrepreneur, they're expecting you to say, yes, that's a great idea. You can do it. But the reality is that if you're a good friend, if you want to support this woman, it is really important that you sit down and tell them the reality of entrepreneurship. It is really hard. There is a roller coaster of emotions that happens. You need a lot of resources. So normally I sit down, I tell them all the great stuff, all the good stuff, all the reasons why they should, but I also sit down and tell them, look, this is what's gonna happen. And the second part that we should do is offer these women an opportunity to connect to the resources that they may need, the networks they might need, the funding they may not know where to go, and also just walk them through what it means to be an entrepreneur and how to navigate that space. So again, informing them, making things clear for them, and connecting them to the resources and networks they would need, I think that would be really important.
Okay, now Jordan, this is a topic very near and dear to my heart, which is how do we have a voice in our communities and in policy and in helping others through government, through advocacy, through the steps we can take every day?
So I have been saying this a lot recently, and I think it is really that on the national level, obviously, it's kind of complicated to get involved, and people have been coming up to me and saying, I've called all of my senators, I've called everyone, I've done all these things, what do I do? And the reality is that's great and really important, but the other really important thing is there are so many incredible organizations and people working right there in your communities, whether that's in New York City or in Buffalo or in Dubuque. You have people who are, maybe the domestic violence shelter needs your skills of making a website, or maybe there's a woman running for office and 6 of your friends can come together and say, we're going to support her by helping raise her money or helping to help, write her a policy plan on some issue that you know a lot about. I think the really important thing that we are all realizing we need to do right now is really dig down deep and get our hands dirty, but do it in our local communities. And so you all have skills. You all are very, very incredible professional women and some amazing men, I think, as well. And really, you have those skills. You just need to also use them to help other people in your communities, because that is really the tangible thing you can do at the moment.
So I think another thing that can really help to eliminate the queen bees is companies and corporate culture and what companies can do to play a role in this. So Nelly, I know that Accenture recently pledged to boost its workforce to 50% women by 2025.
Correct. Yep.
Can you tell us about that?
Yep. So I will tell you, I've been in this space for a very long time, and last week when we made that major public announcement, it was a moment of tremendous pride. Because as a diversity practitioner, I know the power that we have, but when we get leaders behind this, we have a bullhorn that we can just use and really push this agenda forward. So, you know, it's important to understand, and I heard this earlier in the panel, you find that women get more competitive when they feel there's only one slot or two slots, and there are many of you trying to get to that level and have that goal. When a company puts out a statement that by 2025 we're going to be 50% women, when a company puts out a statement that by 2020 we're going to be 25% women managing directors, it kind of sends the message to the culture and to your talent and to your people that there's room for a lot of you. And I think that becomes very, very helpful. It also empowers people to believe that this is not something that we're looking at as a nice thing to do or the right thing to do. This is a business imperative. I mean, this is really critically important for us globally around the world. So I get very excited about the bold steps that we're taking. I get nervous also about making sure that we meet those goals. Very committed to doing that. But as we see more and more CEOs speaking up, and you know, we just signed, 175 companies just signed the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion that was just announced last week as well. And you know, we're in that committee. It sends the message that there's room for everyone and that everyone is valuable and incredibly important to the success of their business.
Thank you. I'm going to do another applause for Accenture because I'm really excited to see that. And I hope we see more companies publicly stating their goals and working hard to accomplish those goals. I think we need companies to really step up on this and play a bigger role. So let's talk about mentorship. During the first question, when you were sharing some of your lions and the people that influenced you, it sounded a lot like some great mentorship happening and sponsorship. So is it an old fad? Is it still important? Romy, what do you think about that?
When we were all talking before, I think we started with this concept or this question of what does the word mentor mean? What is mentorship? And I do think the notion that you have one person that you're having monthly meetings with is quite old-fashioned. And I think all of us should have 20 mentors that are women that we're in touch, and men, that we're in touch with regularly. Some people use this term, a career board of directors, and I love it. Because it also, the idea is it puts the onus on you to report to your board of directors and get their input. And I think that that's really critically important. But I always use this example, kind of going back to this experience I had at the Wall Street Journal. So I was one of 9 vice presidents, the only woman. But at the account executive sales level, there were, call it 150 men and 150 women. So for the 150 men, they had 8 male mentors to choose from. For the 150 women, many of whom wanted a female mentor, it kept me quite busy. And I had a job and kids and everything else. But the problem is that wasn't just my problem. Because of the way that corporate America still looks, where leaders are predominantly men, that problem is ubiquitous. So I think that women have to get aggressive and directed, but thoughtful about how to engage mentors, which are really directors who are giving us advice on specific issues, tangible issues, and I think the conversations that we have with them have to be tactical. And also, we should always be thinking about how am I, I'm going to call up someone for advice. how am I going to do something that helps her as well, or edifies her, so that it's kind of a reciprocal relationship.
And Angelica, I know you had some really interesting thoughts on this as well.
First of all, I definitely want to echo what you just said. It's so important for you as the mentee to bring something to the table. Oftentimes, these mentors are really busy, and they are interested in you, but you also have to be engaged and active in your own mentorship. And there are some few articles online that you can read about, even theoretical models of mentorship. But one of the things that I normally stress with women that we're working with is that don't limit yourself to looking for mentors inside of your company or inside of your institution. There are plenty of other people that you can find. You can actually go on LinkedIn and find someone who might have the same title or a higher title that you're looking for, and connect to that person and say, can we have lunch? Sometimes people see something in you that they really like and they want to nurture. Another thing that I also want to emphasize is that mentorship is not gendered. So you don't have to always look for a woman. Most of the mentors that I've had in my life have actually been men. And they've been, non-Hispanic men, which is interesting too. So it's really important to get outside, think outside the box. And the other thing I want to mention is that sometimes younger people could be your mentor. And that's so important. So it's called reverse mentorship. Try to always look for women who are younger. You might be surprised what you learn. I know I have mentors that are much younger than me, and I always go to them for advice. I also want to learn what's going on among younger people, which is important for me as someone who has a social online platform. So those are just a few tips.
So we've talked a little bit about what we can do as individuals, but we also need to think about what we can do as business leaders or business owners. And Jordan, what the White House Council on Women and Girls, the way that was structured is really interesting to me, and I would love for you to share some of that with us.
Sure. So a lot of people don't know this, but the White House Council on Women and Girls wasn't just inside the White House. Its entire purpose was really so that every branch of the federal government, every agency of the federal government had one or two or several representatives in that agency and in all of the departments of the White House that reported into the Council on Women and Girls to make sure that they were really addressing policies for women and girls. And it was the whole of government's responsibility to make sure that we were putting a gender lens on the policy we were putting out, as opposed to just one small side office somewhere that was talking about it. So I think it's a really good model for companies as well to think about how that really needs to go across every department. So marketing, supply chain. I don't work in corporate world, so I don't know what all the other departments are. But really thinking about how you can make sure that it's the entire company's responsibility. And Accenture talking about it from the top, I think, is really important. And making sure the reason we were so successful in that was because the leadership came from the top, from the president and the first lady and the vice president and Dr. Biden, all the way on down, because they really believed that it was important. But I do think the other piece about that's great is that then you have some mentors also in that whole section of people that were the Council on Women and Girls. I met so many people from the Department of Transportation that are now really good friends that I never would have met that were working on gender issues. So thinking about it in a different way and making sure that it is the entire company's responsibility is really important.
Nelly, you mentioned earlier the CEO letter mandate that came out last week. And it's a trend we're starting to see more of, which is companies who are aligning around specific causes, if it's gender diversity, or we know during the Muslim ban, some of the companies in Silicon Valley stood together. So why is that important for companies, and some that are competitive with each other, to stand behind these social issues?
So did I just turn this off? Is that still on? I think I ran out of battery. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. It's so important. So let me give you a little bit of example of what took place for us back in the fall. After there was a lot of discussion around what's been happening in our country around racial inequality, some of the issues there about needing to get to equal pay, and all these discussions, our North America CEO, Julie Sweet, and Tim Ryan, the North America CEO for PwC, got to talking at one event, at the ELC Council event. And they decided, why don't we, as competitors, work together in this space to really get to equality in the US. So that conversation began. It then transpired to us setting up a steering committee, and for the first time having Accenture, PwC, EY, KPMG, Deloitte, and all these other organizations on a call every month talking about how do we establish this CEO and action, diversity, inclusion focus. It also included other companies that are part of, our clients. And again, when I talk about feeling proud, that was another proud moment because we were actually on a call sharing ideas, sharing best practices. And when it comes to inclusion and diversity and belonging and equality and equity, we don't share a whole lot because we're trying to, fight for the same talent and retain the same talent. So we see a trend going in another direction. It is about companies feeling a sense of tremendous accountability and responsibility to collectively impact in a really good way what's happening in our society. So, the fact that 175 companies signed on, and now our goal is to get the Fortune 1000 companies on, is a huge undertaking, and we just had a call yesterday, and we're celebrating that we're on a great path here. But companies have to unite around this topic. We do more if we work together.
Agreed. All right, so let's end with some action here. I would love for each of you to just share it. And again, we will be handing out action guides after the conference. But let's talk about how do we here, as business leaders, as professionals, as individuals, as community leaders, how do we kill the queen bee? Which we do. Nelly, you want to start?
Sure. So I would ask you, think about your brand. We have a personal brand and we have a professional brand. As you think about that brand, are you known for supporting women, or are you known for not supporting women, or neutral, right? So when it comes to my personal brand, I'm very, very focused and intentional and strategic about ensuring that I focus on supporting women all over the world. So I ask you to think about what's your brand when it comes to women.
So I would say, for me, as sort of the nonprofit action in the room, I would say the thing that we really want to make sure people are doing is when you leave here today, go find 5 or 6 people, some of whom are your friends, some of whom may not be your friends, you maybe have different opinions from each other. Sit down, have coffee, and find something that you all believe in your community and work towards it. Take some action for it. Whether that is your community is your company and you want them to, sign a 50% diversity pledge, which is amazing, or it's in your community and you all realize that there is a woman running for school board and she needs help. Go help her. Just if we all can sort of get together in small packs of women, which will also help to support each other, and really support the people that are doing the great work in communities, I think we can really make some serious change.
So I believe that you can change the world one woman at a time. And so one of the things that I've noticed among women in my circle is that they have a really hard time promoting themselves, promoting their achievements, promoting their skills, promoting what they've had. And so one of the things that I always sit down and do with them is, let's talk about the way you talk about yourself. When you introduce yourself in this meeting, what did you say? Did you come up with numbers? Have you talked about the things that you achieved at work? And also the psychology of promoting yourself. What are the fears? Why are you being humble? And how is not working for you? So I sit down, and sometimes I also have other women in my circle. I bring them in and I say, can you help her? Again, teaching women and helping them understand that it's okay and it's actually important for them to promote themselves.
Yeah, and I go back to the story that I started with, where I had a peer who was an advocate and mentor for me, and I think we should all be each other's lions. And don't look, I think all women who are in leadership positions should certainly be helping women advance, but let's all hold hands and get each other promoted and rise ahead, because we need more women to be promoted, and let's band together and work together to help each other. Let's tell women who we know how they can do things better. Let's compliment them when they do things well, and let's all collude and rise up.
And Jordan, since I have you on the stage here, can you share a little bit about the Galvanize Summits?
Sure. Thanks, Christy. So the United States of Women, we started as our big United States of Women Summit last year in Washington, D.C. Hopefully a couple of you were there. Nice. We are actually hosting summits across the country now on a smaller scale. Our first one is in Chicago, July 15th and 16th, and they really are to make sure we're talking about taking action in specific communities and lifting up the women in their communities that are doing great work, but also training women on running for office, on entrepreneurship, on organizing, and we really want to make sure we are organizing the women in those communities. So if you go to our website, unitedstatesofwomen.org, you can see where we're going, and we'd love all of your help and for all of you to join us. So thank you.
Yes. So after this, we are going to take a short break, and I have one action item that I'm going to leave for all of you. Sometimes networking can be scary, it can be intimidating. All of you are amazing. You have so much to offer. I ask you, before you walk out of this room, to turn to someone you don't know and exchange business cards, shake hands, and say hello, because it's going to start in this room, the connections you make, and let's get it started. So thank you.
We work. We build. We plan. We think. We create. We code and we decode. We grow. We succeed. We fail, but we try again. We rise. We fly. We work. And we deserve to get paid what we're worth. Pay scale helps people, employers and employees, talk about money. Honestly, directly, transparently. People have value, so let's talk about it.